A lot of people think that when it comes to the law of assumption, you have to always be doing more. You have to be doing more affirmations. You have to be scripting more often, trying more techniques. That's actually the reason that people aren't manifesting the things that they want, because if they're constantly trying to prove that they have their desires, it's just reinforcing the fact that they still don't have that thing yet. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how you can apply the law of assumption effortlessly in your daily life without feeling like you're forcing anything or faking anything, and you don't have to feel high vibe 24/7. By the end of this video, you'll be walking away with a simple daily routine that actually works and mindset shifts that can help get your mind in a place of, oh, manifestation's fun. I don't want you to see this as some full-time job type shit. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys one small shift that I made in my life that helped bring my manifestations into the 3D a whole lot faster. So let's stop yapping and let's talk about this. So let's start off with this. Your daily habits aren't creating your manifestation. All you're doing is reinforcing the identity, the version of yourself that naturally has that thing and can hold on to that said thing. But most people tend to fall into a pattern of treating the law of assumption like a to-do list, and that instantly creates pressure that we honestly don't need. You'll wake up in the morning and you'll instantly start thinking, I have to affirm, I have to visualize, I have to stay positive all the time. And then when you don't do these things perfectly, you'll start to assume certain things about yourself, whether it be that you're bad at manifesting, that you're not consistent, and that stuff like this doesn't work out for you. Those are the assumptions that are delaying your manifestations. So in this video, I'm not just going to sit here and give you 20 things to do in order to help your manifestations come into the 3D quicker, because I'll be so real, you don't need 20 things. I'm going to be giving you a simple shift in your self-concept that you can implement into your life, as well as a 4-part routine that fits into your life, not the other way around. And it all starts with what you do the moment you wake up. The morning is the easiest time to shift your identity because your conscious mind hasn't fully woken up yet, so it's still quite impressionable. It's a bit like a sponge, it can soak up things a lot easier compared to broad daylight 1 p.m. type stuff, you know? Most people wake up and they'll instantly assume the old identity that they're trying to get rid of. So maybe they'll check their phone the moment they wake up. They'll remember the bills that they have to pay and that they can't afford. They remember the goals that they haven't hit yet, and they'll think about who they used to be yesterday, and they'll carry that identity into the new day, and it'll just be an ongoing cycle. But here's what I personally do. The moment I wake up, the first thing I ask myself is, who am I being today? There's no affirmation, there's no scripting involved or anything like that. It's purely identity based, because your identity drives assumption and your assumptions drive your reality. So for example, you could wake up in the morning and the first thing you can tell yourself, today I'm being someone who always expects things to work out for them. The second thing I do is a kind of micro embodiment shift, and it literally takes 20 seconds. All I do is stand up, breathe, and feel the version of me who already has my desire. I don't visualize, I feel. Your subconscious reacts so well to emotions. The third and final thing I do is choose the dominant assumption for that day. And it can literally be one sentence. For example, everything is working out in my favor. My desires also desire me. Or it could be, I am the version of myself who already has my desires. Now let's talk about the part that matters the most. How you assume during those weird in-between moments. Now this is the part that actually changes your reality, and it's what you assume in the middle of the day when you see nothing magical happening in the 3D. And that's where doubt sneaks in. That's when you'll slowly start catching yourself reeling back towards the old story and the old assumptions, and you'll also start checking the 3D. And I'll be the first to say I still have moments where I slip back into old assumptions, but it doesn't mean that I'm failing or falling behind. It literally just means that I'm human. Like, it's bound to happen. So whenever you catch yourself spiraling, I want you to do these things. First thing I want you to do is acknowledge this old assumption. You don't have to feed energy into this assumption. All you have to do is just think, okay, let's say, right, I'm thinking, well, my 3D isn't showing that my manifestation is coming, so it's not working. If I catch myself thinking that way, I'll acknowledge the assumption. I'll be like, okay, I'm telling myself that it's not working. And then the second thing I do is neutralize that assumption. In this context, I'd be telling myself, this is just an assumption, not a fact. And then the third thing you're going to do is replace it with the new identity. So you can tell yourself, I'm someone who always gets what they want. or I'm someone whose manifestations come naturally to them. And this literally takes 3 seconds, and this is what helps your manifestations accelerate, because you're helping these assumptions become more automatic to your mind. And you'll notice that as you do this more and more often over time, you won't have to do this as often, because your old assumptions won't be coming up to the forefront of your mind as much. Your subconscious is now used to pushing those thoughts back, neutralizing them, and changing them to fit the story that you want to live out. Now let's get to the part that people overcomplicate a lot, and that is to do with the nighttime. Neville Goddard talked about the state akin to sleep. Now I have a whole video talking about the state akin to sleep, so if you want more detail about it, I'll leave it in the description box. But for this video, to simply explain things, it's a state that you go into where your mind is the most impressionable. But most people turn this going into state akin to sleep, or SATs, as homework. They'll try and force the visualizations to happen. They'll force themselves to script, and they'll end up fighting their own thoughts. And the whole point of getting into SATs is to just drift into it, not to control it. Now here's what I personally do when it comes to evening getting into SATs type stuff. First thing I do is drop the day. I literally tell myself that nothing from today defines me, because nothing from today has power unless you assume that it does. If something shit happened to you today, drop it. It didn't happen. I don't have to identify with that version of myself. The next thing I do is enter the identity of the version of me who already has whatever it is that I want. And I don't do it through visualization, I do it through relief. I do it through an exhale. I tell myself, like, it's done. Like, that sense of relief is what I want you guys to feel. The relief that you already have your manifestation is already done, and you don't need to try hard or do anything in order to keep it or anything like that. You already have it. You don't need to stress. And then when it comes to me actually trying to get into SATs, I just drift into it. I don't force myself to get into it. And then when I am in SATs, when I'm 100% sure, yes, I'm in state akin to sleep. As I said, if you want to know the kind of signs and symptoms and shit like that, go and watch the video linked below. When it comes to a part where I either visualize the scene or I feel the feelings, the emotions that will come with me already having my manifestation, I won't force that either. I won't create the visualization. I won't create the feeling. I'll let my subconscious naturally bring that visualized scene into my mind, or I'll let my subconscious tell my body to, feel this emotion, react in this way. Now we're going to get to the one little shift that I made in my life that helped bring my manifestations into my 3D so quick. This is the part that barely anybody talks about in manifestation videos. If you're constantly checking to see if you're doing the law of assumption right, you're assuming that you are the version of yourself who doesn't have your manifestation, and then that assumption will become dominant in your mind. The moment you stop trying to be the version of you who already has that thing, and instead start believing that you already are that version of yourself, that's when reality will rush to match. And that's when manifestation stops being a technique to you. It's just your baseline. It just becomes your default. It becomes natural for you. So let's put everything that we've spoken about into one effortless system, just to tie everything up in a neat bow. In the morning, you ask yourself, who am I being today? You do a small micro embodiment shift, and then you pick your dominant assumption that you're going to take through the day. Then when you come on to midday, this will literally take 3 seconds no matter what time of the day it is. Whenever you notice an old assumption, acknowledge it, neutralize it, and then choose a new assumption to override the old one. And you can do this as many times as you need to during the day as well, don't forget. Then in the nighttime, drop the day. You don't have to identify with it if you don't want to. Shift into the it's done identity, and then drift into the feelings that come along with that. If you visualize, you end up visualizing. And that's literally all that you need to do in order to apply the law of assumption into your daily life without feeling like you're faking anything or forcing things to happen. And you're not trying to be perfect about it all, because who's perfect? Let's be real. Remember, you're not doing these things to manifest. You're doing them to become the version of you who just naturally manifests anything and everything that they want. And that's the version that I'm practicing right now alongside you guys. Most people think that manifestation works because of the techniques that they're using, but the truth is, your techniques are not what create your reality. Your assumptions are. And this is why everybody seems to be doing everything right, yet they see nothing changing. Because if your assumptions contradict the techniques that you're using, your assumptions will always win. So in today's video, I wanted to break this topic down in a way that clicks for you guys, so that manifestation can feel more simple, more natural, and more inevitable, because let's be real, that's what we all want. And I'm also going to be talking to you guys about why some manifestations seem to happen instantly, yet others seem to take months or even years to come into fruition. And it has nothing to do with how hard you try. So let's talk about it, because once you understand this, you will never look at manifestation the same again, trust me. We need to start off with probably one of the biggest misconceptions in the law of assumption community. Techniques do not manifest. They're tools, they're optional, and they're helpful at best. I use so many of them, but they do not create. And the reason this is so important is because a lot of people believe that the results that they get depends on the techniques that they're using, how perfect they execute them, how often they do it, how long they do it for. And then they end up treating manifestation like a chore or like homework, instead of understanding what it actually is. It's a shift in being, it's a shift in identity, it's a shift in assumption. Because if you think about it like this, if you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm loved, I'm chosen, I'm wanted 1,000 times a day, but deep down you still assume that you're somebody who isn't chosen, who isn't wanted, who isn't loved, your assumptions will win every single time. You're not manifesting from the techniques, you're manifesting from the state that you're in whilst doing them. Think about it like this, your techniques express your state, they don't override them. And that is where so many people get stuck. So let's get clear on what assumptions actually are. Your assumptions aren't your thoughts, they aren't your emotions, they're not your mood that you are just in during the day. Your assumptions are your deep automatic expectations of your life. They're things that you believe without thinking. They're the identity that you return to. That's the baseline that you live from, pretty much. And they can sound like things like love always finds its way to me, people understand me easily, I attract opportunities all the time, everywhere I go, life just supports me. And on the other end, it sound like I always have to work twice as hard to get things that I want, things never work out for me, people always leave, I struggle to get what I want, stuff like that. And here's the key part, these things don't have to be actively thought about to be around. They're like running in the background, like a default setting. It's like they're running off of autopilot. You don't have to be consciously and manually thinking about them for them to be there. Most people don't manifest what they want because what they're actually manifesting is what they already assume. So pretty much techniques are what sit on the surface, yet assumptions is what lives underneath that. So why do techniques fail? Because your subconscious isn't responding to what you say. It's responding to what you believe is true. And if what you're saying contradicts something that you assume, your mind reads that technique as evidence of lack of something, not an abundance of something. Right, so let me give you a few examples of how this could show up in your life. If you're using affirmations to do with love, let's just say, I am loved. If you're using that affirmation, but if your state is still something like, I'm afraid that my SP will leave me, your mind will interpret the affirmation that you're trying to give it as something that your mind just doesn't believe. Another example, if you visualize wealth, yet your current state is still, money's unpredictable for me, for example, that's when your visualization becomes a fantasy and not just part of your identity. The same thing goes for this example. If you're trying to script as your desired self from your desired reality, but your assumption is still, things never go my way, things never work out for me, nothing changes, that's when your scripting becomes emotional escapism and not embodiment in action. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong, it's just the fact that you're trying to use these techniques to overpower an already dominant assumption in your mind. And your assumption is always the one that's driving the car. So how do you even identify what your current assumptions are? You look at two things. The first thing you look at is your automatic reactions and responses to certain things. Let's say if you receive a compliment from someone, is your first thought, do they actually mean it? If someone takes a little too long to text back, is your first thought, oh my god, they've lost interest, what if they don't like me? If money is somehow delayed in your 3D, is your first thought, what's happened to the money? Oh, it must have been something that I've done. I must have, came into some debt without realizing. These automatic reactions expose dominant assumptions because your mind just instantly goes to them without you even having to think so hard. It just happens like that. The second thing I want you to look for are reoccurring patterns. Patterns are like manifestations of long held assumptions. So if you see something in your life that's repeating itself, whether that be a certain thought process or literally a physical action that you carry out physically, it is rooted in a belief about yourself or life that you've just normalized. And this isn't about blaming yourself for doing these things. This is just you trying to understand these mechanisms so that you can change them. Because once you see your assumptions, you can shift them, and that's when you'll see things change. This part is not only really important, but it's a part of the process that a lot of people tend to overcomplicate. Shifting an assumption doesn't mean that you're forcing new thoughts and just trying really, really hard. All it means is that you're choosing a new identity, and that's the identity that you choose to be your baseline, and that's what you'll return to. It just means choosing a new identity and letting that new identity become your baseline from now on. So, here's how to do it. First thing, identify an old assumption. Don't dwell on it, just acknowledge it. Like, yeah, this has been my default. Then, when you choose a new assumption to work with, choose it from a place of authority, not from a sense of, oh, I hope this is me in the future. I wish that this was me in the future. Authority, like, yeah, this is me. So let's just say, I am the version of me who blank is normal or is normal for them. Little example, you could say, I am the version of me who being confident is normal for them. Just something like that. Then I want you to saturate your inner world with this new identity. Now this is where you can use techniques, but not to manifest the thing itself, but to condition the new state. This is where affirmations become just natural thoughts in this state. This is where if you use scripting, that becomes embodiment, and then if you visualize, it's just like thinking of a memory. Number 4, drop the checking. Stop checking for proof. This is the part that most people resist, because the second you check for proof in the 3D, that's when you step back into your old assumptions. You stop being, and then you start thinking about your manifestations from a sense of hoping they happen, wishing they happen, wanting them to happen. Your assumption shifts when your identity shifts, and then your reality shifts when these said assumptions become natural for you to think about. They're not forced, they're not repeated 1,000 times, just natural. Normal. Sometimes we shift assumptions without even realizing it. So let's say you've fallen in love with someone. Your assumptions will naturally become, of course I'm loved because I have this person that loves me for who I am, that, is literally obsessed with me. Similar thing goes for when you feel confident, your assumptions change and they become something like, of course things work out for me because I walk into a room and I just radiate confidence. When you're in some sort of flow state, your assumptions become life is easy and everything seems supported. Everything's going my way right now. Those manifestations feel effortless. They come into the 3D a lot faster because there's nothing internal that's contradicting them. But when you want something that might be touching an old wound or something that challenges an old identity, you're not just shifting your desire, you're shifting the assumption that lives underneath it. So it takes longer, not because the universe is slow, but because you're unlearning who you are to become someone new. Right, so let me give you some real life examples because this is where everything clicks. Somebody can do every love technique in the world. I'm victim to, 2020 where you'd write their name like 3 times, place some rose quartz on it and put it under your pillow overnight. But the moment they shift their assumptions from saying, I'm afraid of losing this specific person, to I'm the kind of person who is always loved and valued, the entire dynamic changes, often instantly. You'll notice that people will be texting you back. People show up differently, conversations will soften, tension will dissolve. Not because the technique worked, but because your identity shifted. Techniques just helped you stay anchored in that new identity. Next example, when somebody assumes something like money is always random for me. I never know when I'm going to come into like a lump sum of money. I struggle to budget, just something along those lines. That's when money will always be inconsistent in their life because that's what they assume. But when somebody's assumption changes to money flows to me because I always expect it to, that's when you'll see things change in the 3D world. You'll start seeing you getting random back payments that you never realized were going to come through. You might get higher tips from people, you might receive new clients if you receive clients on your kind of business thing. And all of that changed because the baseline expectation that money always flows to you because that's what you expect it to do. You can affirm all day long that you're a confident person, right? But when your assumption changes to something like I'm the kind of person who always belongs wherever I am, they don't need the confidence techniques anymore because confidence just becomes their natural state. And this is why I say the assumptions are what create, the techniques are the support. Living from a new assumption that you've made for yourself isn't acting fake. It's not like you're forcing positivity. It literally means that you wake up every day and you say to yourself, I am the version of me where this stuff is already true. And you speak from that version, you react from that version, and you breathe from that version. You literally are them from this day going forward. And the 3D doesn't even have to reflect it yet, because your inner world is what always reflects it first, because that's what the 3D reflects itself off of. The 4D is what shifts instantly. The 3D will just reflect that in due time, and that is what creates the shift. Now, this is something that almost nobody talks about. When an assumption finally lands, your desires won't feel urgent anymore. Not because you don't care, it just feels inevitable. Neville Goddard called this naturalness, because when the desire becomes something familiar, it becomes something natural and expected. When it finally happens, when it finally comes into the 3D, it kind of feels a bit anticlimactic. It won't feel dramatic. It won't feel like this magical, oh my god, I've just witnessed a miracle type thing. It'll just feel normal because in your inner world, it already was. So the truth of all of this is that it was never about the techniques. It was never about how hard you tried. It was never about how often you affirmed or visualized or scripted. It was always about your assumption. Your assumptions are the soil. Reality is the tree, and techniques that you use are like gardening tools. When you shift the soil, the entire landscape changes. You don't have to force anything, you don't have to chase anything or prove anything. You just come back to the simple truth. Your reality is merely just a mirror of the assumptions that you believe to be true about yourself and your life. And you get to choose that today, tomorrow, and every single moment after that. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what feels normal to you. And that might be a sentence that would feel uncomfortable. I know that if I was in an earlier position in my manifestation journey, I would feel called out to hell if someone told that to me, but I feel like it's a sentence that can help you to understand why some manifestations feel effortless whilst others feel like you're literally about to bare knuckle fight with reality to get that thing. And it's also uncomfortable because we've been taught to believe for a long time that desires are the engine to manifestation. It's the reason it works in the first place. That if you want something badly enough, if you focus clearly, if you visualize clearly, then eventually it has to show up. But if that were true, the people who would want money the most in the world would have the most money. The people who would want love most in the world would always be in fulfilling relationships. And the people who want peace the most wouldn't constantly be stuck in a state of anxiety. So in this video, I want to really slow down and break down what normal means when it comes to manifestation, how the subconscious mind decides what to allow into your life, and how when you try to manifest something that doesn't feel normal to you yet, it actually creates resistance instead of results. So this video isn't about motivation, it's about mechanism. So let's get straight to it. Let's first set something straight right off the bat. Wanting something is not a bad thing. Desire, it's not wrong, it's not low vibrational, and it's not something that you have to suppress or transcend or get across. Desire is simply just information. The problem isn't about wanting, it's what that wanting turns into internally. And for most people, wanting something also means that this isn't my reality yet, I don't have this thing, it would be a big change, it would feel unusual for me. And that's where manifestation starts breaking down, because you don't manifest things from what excites you consciously. Your subconscious mind responds to what your nervous system recognizes as a familiar thing. And it's not impressed by desire, it's impressed by normalcy. That's a weird word, isn't it? Normalcy. So when we talk about the term you manifest what feels normal to you, we don't mean that you manifest what you feel is logically possible in your mind. We're talking about what your nervous system is comfortable sustaining. Normal is what your body doesn't question. Normal to your body is something that won't activate fight or flight. It won't activate vigilance. When something's normal to you, you won't feel like you have to hold on to it in case it leaves. When something feels normal, you won't constantly feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. A few examples here. If you want love, you consciously want it. Yet emotionally, if love for you has always been emotionally unstable, unsafe, and inconsistent, struggle is what's normal for your nervous system. Connection isn't. Somebody can consciously want to be financially abundant, but if emotionally they're still used to scarcity, money never comes to them easily, they can't budget, they can't hold on to money, then having money will feel temporary, it'll feel fragile, and it'll feel stressful when you do have money. The subconscious mind isn't asking, what do you want? It's asking you, is this something that you recognize? And your subconscious mind will always choose something that it recognizes over preference any day. Your subconscious mind has one primary job, and that is to maintain internal consistency. Not happiness, not success, consistency. And this is why a lot of people tend to self-sabotage once their manifestations actually arrive. Because getting something you want is one thing, but allowing it to stay is literally something else. It's a whole nother thing. If something doesn't feel normal to you, your subconscious mind will try its absolute hardest to get you to return to home base. And this home base is built upon past experiences, emotional conditioning, repeated identity states, so that's literally your self-concept, and what you've learnt to expect. And this is why affirmations fail if they're only mental. You can tell yourself that you're wealthy, you're abundant, you're loved, but if your body is tense while saying it, it's almost like there's an inner flinch, and it's like your body's like, yeah, right, as if that's going to happen. And that itself tells you everything that you need to know. Okay, now this is the part that a lot of people don't talk about, but I'm going to because it's me. Sometimes manifestations do show up, but then they fall apart literally straight away. You get with your SP, but the relationship feels unstable from day one. Money comes in, but it will disappear just as fast. The opportunity arrives, but you feel anxiety instead of a sense of relief. And that's when people start to think that they could be misaligned, that they've done something wrong, maybe they've stopped believing in manifestation like they used to. But what's actually happening is a lot simpler. The manifestation has arrived, but it doesn't match your internal state of what's normal. So your system didn't know how to hold on to it. This shows that manifestation isn't just about attracting things into your life, it's about stabilizing them so that they stay. Now, this is the part where manifestation feels like real work, not hard work. We're not saying manifestation's a difficult, hard process, but it's just honest. You don't change what feels normal to your nervous system by forcing yourself to believe a certain thing. You change it through repeated emotional exposure, and you let yourself feel this through feeling safe without crisis. You feel peace without waiting for disruption or things to go wrong. You feel neutrality without guilt, and you feel satisfaction without justification. And that is embodiment. You don't ask yourself, how do I manifest this? You ask yourself, how would I act? How would I feel if this thing were ordinary and normal for me to have? And then you start practicing that state in very, very small, non-dramatic ways, because normalcy isn't built quietly. You don't build it from obsession or urgency. You build it through repetition without pressure. And once something feels normal to you, you no longer chase it. You no longer constantly look for signs in the 3D to see if your manifestation's coming. You don't overthink anything about it. You don't fear losing it once it's here. And that is where manifestation becomes effortless. Not because you stopped wanting your manifestation. That wanting just dissolved into expectation. And expectation's calm. It's stable. It's assumed. And that is law of assumption in practice. So you don't manifest what you want. You manifest what feels normal to your nervous system, your subconscious mind, and your identity. And if something hasn't shown up in the 3D, you don't ask yourself, why isn't this working? You instead ask yourself, does this feel normal to me yet? And if it doesn't mean that you're failing. It's just information. You're probably watching this video because at this point in your manifestation journey, you are exhausted. You've been affirming all the time, listening to subliminals, journaling, trying to visualize, and yet you'll look to your 3D and you'll see no progress, and it feels like a slap in the face. I've been in that exact same position, but it wasn't until very recently where I realized that there was one thing I was doing that was the reason my manifestations felt delayed. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my projector versus screen 3D anecdote. This anecdote literally helped me stay so stable within my self-concept that I was able to land a brand deal and multiple sales on my masterclasses without having to do a thing. But before I tell you how to do it, I'm going to be talking about how me facing my fears and taking a random shopping trip were actually the keys to unlocking some of these manifestations. So let's get straight to it. So I want you to think of your life being displayed in a movie theatre, in a cinema, and what's showing on the screen is your 3D reality your life? Most of us spend a lot of time stood at the front of this cinema room watching our life play out. And as soon as we see something that we don't particularly like, we think that we have to fix the screen in order to change what's being shown. But the truth of the matter, the screen that our reality is being shown on is literally just a dead piece of fabric. It cannot change by itself. What we have to do is bring our focus towards the back of the room where the projector is. The projector in this context represents your self-concept, your inner state, your 4D. And the film that we place in the projector represents our current assumptions, our current beliefs. And the light that comes out of the projector and what we're shown is our awareness of the 3D, of the movie that's being shown. So when you react to the 3D, that's essentially you screaming at this movie screen, expecting things to change without paying attention to the film reel that you're putting into the projector that's showing this thing in the first place. So you can't change what's being shown on the screen without changing the film that's in the projector first. Now I'll explain how to change the film a bit later, but I first need to talk about 3D lag because this is the part of the process where 99% of people will just quit. The 3D is just old news. It's a delayed reflection of our past assumptions, our past beliefs. And the 3D has no choice but to reflect whatever the 4D shows first. I've spoken about the mirror analogy a couple of times on this channel, but let's say you're looking at your reflection in the mirror. If you frown, your reflection will frown back. But if you want your reflection to smile at you, it can't smile unless you're smiling first. So this is where my personal story time came into play. So let me take you to the beginning of this story time. So in the group of shops where I go to run errands for my mom, there are 2 routes that I can take to get there, and one of them is a whole lot quicker. But a few weeks ago I had a nightmare where I was taking that shorter route and I got mugged. And it was quite scary, so for the past few weeks, I chose not to go that way. Obviously, this was my nervous system's version of protecting me because they saw that route as now unsafe. Therefore, let's just take the longer way because it's safer. But you know what I did yesterday? I thought, screw it, I'm gonna go this shorter way, even though my nervous system probably doesn't want me to do that. I'm proving to my nervous system that although you feel unsafe in this situation, although you're trying to protect me from going this way, I'm gonna walk this shortcut and show you, more like show myself, that nothing will happen. I'll be completely fine. And guess what happened? I walked that route completely fine. I stabilized my nervous system, therefore I brought the power back to myself. I didn't give the power away to the 3D, away to that specific nightmare anymore. And I felt so happy doing that. But when I got to this group of shops, there was still one more tiny block that was like metaphorically pinching the hose of abundance for me. I had to choose what shop I wanted to get my fruit and veg from. Now there are multiple shops that I could have chose, but in my mind was kind of going towards M&S Food Hall. If you're from the UK, you know what an M&S Food Hall is. A lot of people think of it as a more expensive food shop place, right? But in my mind, I was like, But in the end, I chose to shop at M&S Food Hall, not because I needed the fruit, because as I say, there were multiple choices of shop I could have went to, but I chose myself to go to M&S Food Hall. Why? I wanted to tell my nervous system that the financially comfortable version of me is my current reality, regardless of what the 3D shows. So I went to M&S and I got the fruit and veg. I spent money there without feeling guilty about it, without feeling bad, because in my mind I was like, this is normal for me. It's normal for me to shop here, you know? I wasn't craving the result of being financially comfortable. I just started being the version of myself who was financially comfortable. And so I went home in my M&S bag, showed my mom, she was happy. So again, another example where I stabilized my nervous system. My nervous system at first was like, you could go to where you usually go because that's, where you can save the most money, but instead went to M&S, stabilized my nervous system. Although you feel unsafe in this situation, I'm going to show you that nothing bad will happen if we go here to get the fruit and veg. And the moment I grabbed my power and brought it back to myself, because before these moments I was giving my power away to the 3D. I wasn't going the shorter way because I was scared. I didn't want to go to M&S Food Hall because it was too expensive. And the moment I stopped giving my power away to the lesser thing, that's when the screen in the movie theater, aka the 3D reality, flipped. And that's when the same day I received multiple sales of my masterclasses. And these didn't come because I worked my ass off that specific day to get there. They came because I was finally detached enough from the outcome, the how and the when, to actually let these manifestations come into my reality. Which brings me on to talking about the art of detachment. I love talking about detachment because a lot of you probably think you have to act like you don't want your manifestation, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing when we're detaching is bringing our focus away from lesser things. And these lesser things could be things like fears, doubts, constant checking for proof in the 3D, and things like that. When we're attached to the outcome or the how, the when this manifestation is going to happen, that's when we're projecting a frequency of craving that manifestation, of being so desperate for that manifestation. You probably say in your mind, I won't feel happy, I won't feel content until I have this manifestation. I need that proof in order to feel content, even though you don't. So I want you to ask yourself, what lesser things have you been obsessing over lately? Is it the number in your bank account? Is it a specific message that you've received from somebody? Because when you obsess over these lesser things, you're giving them your power. And when we talk about detachment in an LOA concept, we basically mean that we're telling ourselves, I am so stable in my identity right now that I don't need the 3D to prove anything to me. And that's how you basically stop the negative projection of, your fears, your doubts, your wondering how things are going to happen or when, and you just let the 3D catch up. So how do we change this film in our projector? Well, first thing we need to do, as I said earlier, bring your attention to the projector itself and the film that you're actually putting in. So think about your self-concept. How do you see yourself? How do you see the world treating you? Start at the self-concept and identity level. I have a bunch of videos delving into self-concept. I'll leave one linked below so you can go and watch it. Think about your self-concept first. Then when you bring identity into the equation, that's when you start asking yourself the question, how would I act day to day if I were already this version of myself? And you don't even have to think about, the typical, I'd act like this. I want you to think about how this version of you would think. What standards would they set for themselves? What boundaries would they put in place for themselves? What decisions would they make on a day-to-day basis? I really want you to get deep into the nitty-gritty of that. Because then, once you know how this version of you acts, that's when you can embody that version of you. You're not acting like them. You are being them. And that's where you really do start to notice that you're making different choices, therefore you're influencing the results that you get. Something that I also recommend as well are using subliminals. Now, I want to make a point here. Subliminals don't do the manifesting for you. Obviously, you're the person, the only person that manifests things into your life, right? I just really, really love subliminals, okay? I've been using this specific subliminal to fall asleep to literally every single night for the past week. I'll leave it in the link in the description box below. I honestly love it. I love it so much. And I play it overnight whilst I sleep because it's kind of like feeding my mind affirmations at the point where my mind is the most impressionable. It will soak up these affirmations like a sponge. Then the final thing you can do is detach. As we said earlier, detach, not in a nonchalant, I don't care about this manifestation way, but in a way where you have a deep sense of knowing that, my manifestation is already here, no matter what the 3D says. Doesn't matter how it happened, doesn't matter when. All I know is that it happened. And that's literally it. Like, there's no overcomplication or anything. Like, that's literally all you have to do. So the moral of this story? Yeah, I'll go with that. Stop checking the screen and bring your focus back to the projector. If manifestation were instant, we'd literally all be living our dream life right now. And I know how frustrating it is when you're trying literally everything. You're affirming, you're visualizing, scripting, trying to live from the end state, and yet you're seeing absolutely no progress with your manifestation. But what if delays to do with our manifestations aren't proof that things aren't working, but they're instead proof that the law of assumption is working exactly how it's meant to? By the end of this video, you'll understand why actually waiting is part of the embodiment process and not a mistake. So let's get straight to it. So let's first talk about the internet version of law of assumption, because over time, this law has become very, very oversimplified and it's not been explained thoroughly enough. That may be due to short form content being on the rise, people's attention spans are shorter and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people on the internet, when it comes to law of assumption, they say all you have to do is assume it, feel it, and then it shows up in the 3D fast. But they're missing out everything to do with self-concept, identity, persistence, how to react when the 3D potentially could trigger you. And this therefore creates unrealistic expectations. Adding on to, like I said earlier, short form content is a lot more common now than it was a few years ago. And back before you could make 10-minute videos and 3-minute videos over on TikTok, you had like 60 seconds to speak your piece. So you can't obviously fit every single piece of information that you could into 60 seconds without things making absolutely no sense. Something else I also think has contributed is people's success stories missing out timelines. A lot of people don't explain how long it took for them to receive certain manifestations. So when people are watching these videos and comparing it to their life, that's when they start thinking that they're doing things wrong because things aren't showing up as quickly as they should. And that's when they'll start force checking reality, checking the 3D, because they think they're doing something wrong. Because all they see on social media are people talking about success stories but not saying how long it took them. The thing is here, instant manifestation isn't the law. Consistency within your identity and self-concept, that's the law. So let's talk about delays. Let's actually get the definition up on my phone, what the word delay means. It's a noun, a period of time by which something is late or postponed. But when we talk about it in a law of assumption kind of context, when we put a law of assumption lens onto things, it means that time is passing without visual confirmation of something. And humans often misinterpret delay because we've been influenced so much by instant feedback culture. Taking you back to LOA over on TikTok, people will talk about their success stories without telling you how long it took them. They won't even tell you the struggles that they faced either. They won't talk about how they were this close to giving up and going back to the old story. They don't talk about how they've had to literally have a talking to remember who the fuck they are when it comes to their manifestation. They don't talk about the struggles with persistence. Like, it's honestly crazy to me. So let's talk about two different anecdotes. I've used them both in previous videos, but I thought that now would be the perfect time to bring them up again. Let's say you're holding a seed right now, and this seed is referencing your manifestation. You put it in the ground, you plant it, right? That's your manifestation planted into your subconscious mind. That's you placing the assumption in your subconscious mind. Water it, and the water is maybe affirmations or visualization. After you've watered it, you don't go digging the soil up to look at the seed to see if it's growing. You just know it's growing, therefore you leave it. You keep feeding it affirmations, visualization, visualizing through sats, living from the end state, acting as if. A similar anecdote, if I were to call up my favourite takeout place and order food, I won't constantly be calling this takeaway place back up, asking if the food's cooking, asking if it's packaged, asking if a delivery driver's picked it up, asking if it's on the way. I already know it's on the way, so I don't need to stress. I can just sit back and wait for it to appear. Well, not appear at my door, you kind of get what I mean. So now let's talk about psychological versus physical timelines. The 4D versus the 3D, if you will. Internal changes always happen first. Your 4D is basically your identity, your self-concept, your imagination, your inner state. This place, the 4D, is the only place where your manifestations are instant. Once you decide that something's already done, this is where it happens first, instantly. The 3D, your physical reality, reflects off of your 4D, and when it's rearranging itself based off of your 4D, so like I said, that's your self-concept, inner state, identity, whatever, that will obviously take time. You've been conditioned to believe throughout your whole entire life that what you see is what you believe, but when it comes to law of assumption, it's actually the other way around. What you believe is what you see. But here's one important thing that I want you guys to remember. Delay will only become failure when you change your assumption, or even something as simple as telling yourself that delay equals failure. That's how easy it can be. And obviously, since it's a law of assumption video, the second your 4D accepts an assumption as truth, the moment you've planted that seed into your subconscious, that's when reality gets to work. It will start rearranging the second a seed is planted. Now here's where most people tend to cancel out literally everything that they've done so far, and it's all to do with identity lag. So kind of going back to the previous topic, your self-concept will update faster than the physical reality does, as we've already spoken about. So, a couple of examples where this identity lag will kind of show up. You might have a new mindset to do with financial abundance, yet you'll still wake up the next morning with your old bank balance. Another example, you might carry this new sense of confidence within your identity, yet people will still be reacting in the way that they usually do based off of how you used to act, your old identity, your old self-concept. This lag exists because other people and other objects, the physical reality is still responding to the old version of you, because as I say, the 3D is a delayed reflection of the 4D since it takes time to catch up, you know what I mean? Systems take time to recalibrate. Oh my god, I literally just thought of this anecdote right now. So imagine if you have an Apple phone or whatever, I don't know how many other phones do this, but they kind of have Face ID on their phone. I created my Face ID with a straight face, so my phone only unlocks if I pull a straight face. Yet if I'm smiling, it won't work because my phone is not used to seeing me smile. It's not used to that version of me. I think that's a cool anecdote, isn't it? Right? But something else I also want to stress as well, you don't manifest what you want. You don't manifest what you desire. You manifest from who you are, your identity and your self-concept, and you manifest what feels normal for you to not only have, but to also hold on to. And as we said before, your 4D, your mind, your body, your nervous system, they recalibrate quicker than the world does. So that's why I like to talk about persistence to do with manifestation, because you have to persist, you have to give the 3D time to reflect. And I remember when I first realized this in my personal manifestation journey, when I email brands to ask, could we potentially collaborate together and things like that, I send over my portfolio and all that kind of stuff, I'd constantly be checking my email. I have notifications on. I'd know when the brand had replied, right? I'd still be checking my email again and again and again, checking the 3D. And in my mind, I'm there thinking, it's been like an hour. They probably looked at it and just dismissed it straight away because I'm not all that, you know what I mean? What it actually was me checking a delayed reflection of my past assumptions, my past identity, my past self-concept. Because the work that I'd done beforehand, telling myself I'm the type of person that brands would love to work with, right? Yet me constantly checking my emails to see if they'd reply didn't match up with that affirmation that I was telling myself. It didn't match up with the self-concept I was trying to ingrain. Nothing was wrong with what I was doing. It was just the fact that nothing had caught up yet, and that's what I thought was going wrong. And that specific delay, because as I say, the brands did end up, messaging me back and stuff. It wasn't about the delay. This whole experience taught me more than instant manifestation literally ever could. Now let's talk about checking the 3D, because we've all fell victim to accidentally checking the 3D. I have plenty of times. I know when I have accidentally checked the 3D, I kind of want not only that reassurance, but that dopamine hit, because as I said earlier, we've been conditioned to believe that what we see is what we believe. So when I see something in the physical, that makes me kind of believe it more. Therefore, my mind wants to check the 3D more. But I have to kind of grab myself and be like, no. The reason why checking the 3D doesn't help with manifestation, even though you might think it is because it's reinforcing the identity of somebody waiting for something to happen. And with law of assumption, if you already have the thing that you want, why would you constantly be checking to see if it's there? You know what I mean? The version of you who would already have that manifestation wouldn't need to check because they already have that thing, or they already act that way, they're already with their SP, they already have that amount of money in their bank account or whatever. You can't embody the wish fulfilled whilst auditing the absence of your manifestation. If we're seeing this from a nervous system angle as well, because we can't ignore the nervous system stuff, a lot of people think that you can't. Checking for proof in the 3D is almost like subtle anxiety or anticipation anxiety. We're waiting for something to show up, we're hoping it will show up, we're wishing. And anxiety is part of the old self-concept, okay? That's something that we don't want to bring into our new self-concept, our new identity. So checking the 3D isn't a neutral thing. It's not something that the version of you who already has your manifestations would do. By checking the 3D, you're giving a vote, in a way, to the old story. So let's talk about embodiment versus pretending, because a lot of people think that they're doing the embodiment work, but they're actually deep down knowing that they're pretending, which is not what we want. Embodiment isn't even acting like the desired version of yourself. Embodiment is acting as your desired self because that's who you are. It's normal for you to act that way, and that's what your mind kind of has to be convinced of. If you're practicing embodiment yet deep down you're thinking that you look delusional, you look crazy, people are going to think you're not all there, and deep down you know that you're faking things, that you're pretending, nothing's going to come from that embodiment, because the assumption is that you're pretending to act like this. But here are some signs that show that you're actually doing your embodiment work correctly. Firstly, there's less emotional urgency consistency when it comes to your manifestation. A lot of people kind of fall into a trap where they say to themselves, I won't feel happy, I won't feel satisfied until this manifestation comes into the 3D. If I don't have this manifestation, I won't feel content with life. I won't feel satisfied, and that's not the mindset you want to have. So when you're doing your embodiment work and you start to kind of detach in a way from this manifestation, in the sense that you already have this manifestation, your life is already content with it, there's nothing else for you to do. There's no emotional urgency there to absolutely have that, otherwise the world's going to end, you know? There'll also be less mental rehearsal. You won't be purposely feeding yourself specific affirmations or visualizations, anything like that, because this version of you naturally acts this way without even trying. You won't have to force this new identity and this new self-concept. You won't have to keep reminding yourself, I have to act like this because this version of me acts like this, you know? It will just be more normal for you to act in that way. You'll also feel a sense of kind of more neutrality when it comes to your manifestation. When you see bridges of incident in the 3D, which are kind of like stepping stones that show that the 3D is actually catching up. When you do see these bridges of incidents in your 3D, you're not going to be like jumping for joy, being really overexcited. The version of you that already has this thing, emphasis on already has this thing, they wouldn't be jumping for joy, they wouldn't be over the moon about seeing that thing come into fruition, because they already have it and it's normal for them to have that thing. What you don't want to look for when it comes to embodiment work is, as I say, elements of acting overexcited when you see kind of proof in the 3D, even though you shouldn't really be looking for said proof. When you do kind of end up seeing it without meaning to, you don't want to overreact about it. Just be like, oh, that's normal, that's meant to happen, you know? Don't force positivity either, because we all know that doesn't end well. If you force yourself to be positive, what's that gonna do? Being calm is the confirmation when it comes to embodiment. When you feel kind of bored, that is also a good sign. It might not look like it when I say it, but trust me, if this version of you sees having your manifestations as normal for them to have and hold on to, it's normal for them to act a certain way, dress a certain way, you know, react in a certain way. If anything, they kind of just act normal. That's like the best way I can put it. That might feel boring, but that is a sign that you're actually embodying this version of you, because you don't see life as this version of you on a pedestal anymore. You just see it as normal. So the way I see things, delay is like the quiet phase before your manifestations come into the 3D. Now, these next things that I'm going to tell you aren't necessarily a checklist. They're kind of like orientation in a way, just to kind of help you stay on the right track when it comes to persisting with your new identity, with your new self-concept. First thing, stop asking yourself when or how a manifestation is going to happen. The version of you that already has what you want, they already have it. They don't care about when it happened or how now. They already have that thing. You know what I mean? All that's in their mind is that they have this thing, or they act this certain way. They're with this specific person, and that's all that matters. I want you to instead start asking, who am I being today? When you wake up in the morning, the first thing I want you to think about is, who am I being today? And this is where you think about, you know, your new identity, your new self-concept, because that sets the foundation for the whole day of how you're going to act, how you're going to respond, the decisions that you're going to make. That helps. It really, really does. You're probably thinking, well, how do I respond when doubt creeps in, or when the 3D potentially triggers me? Because that will happen. It's just the case of staying persistent. And that does sound easier said than done, so here are a few tips. So, main thing, don't fight it. Don't act all of a sudden aggressive when you feel doubt creep into your mind, or when you see something in the 3D that doesn't line up. When it comes to the 3D, just simply bring yourself back to your baseline, which is your new identity / self-concept, and just say, this is the old story. The 3D is just reflecting old stuff, old news, and that's all you have to do. When it comes to doubt, you don't want to correct it aggressively and start randomly shoving just random affirmations into your mind, because that reinforces forced positivity, which, as I said earlier, we don't want. So when it does come to doubt, just slowly and calmly return to your new identity, being like, this is who I am now, and then just carry on. That's literally all you have to say. This is who I am now. The law of assumption doesn't respond to effort, it responds to consistency. So, as I said in the intro, if the law of assumption were to be instant, everybody would have absolutely everything that they want without the need to do embodiment work. All they need is emotion. Something that I also want you to take away from this video. The law of assumption isn't about chasing quick results. It's all about who you become stable as. And the delays that you're experiencing don't mean that you're resisting something or that you're doing anything wrong. You're just in that awkward in-between where your old identity is dissolving and your new reality is starting to push forward. So all you need to do is persist and stay consistent with that persistence, and that's all you'll need. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in the manifesting community, whether they're trying to manifest their desires or change their reality, is that they underestimate the power of self-concept. I've spoken about self-concept in little drips and drabs across videos on my channel, but today I'm going to be doing a deep dive on this because I get so many comments saying, hey Kiera, I want to manifest X, Y, and Z, or I want to shift to my desired reality. But they always end their sentence with something like, but I haven't seen my results. I haven't seen progress that I've wanted. I can't do it. It's not working. I've been trying for this many years. Sorry to break it to you, but those things that you're saying aren't just throwaway phrases. They're actually having an effect on your reality, and that is what's blocking you. It doesn't matter what method you're using. It doesn't matter what techniques you're using. Saying that you can't do it, saying all of those things that I said then, that is what's blocking you. And some of you don't even realise that you're doing it because you're just saying them on a whim. You don't realise how powerful your self-concept is. And today I'm going to change that. Because for most of you, the missing piece to your manifestation journey, to your shifting journey, is understanding how powerful your self-concept really is. So not only am I going to be talking about what self-concept actually is in this video, I'm going to be telling you why it's the foundation to literally anything to do with manifesting your desires and shifting your reality. And I'm also going to tell you how to change your self-concept because that's probably why you're here as well. So let's just get straight to it. So burning question, Kiera, what the hell even is self-concept? It is basically your identity, how you speak about yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you believe life works when it comes to you. So, little kind of like exercise. If I were to ask you to describe yourself, how would you do that? Would you say that you're capable? Would you say that you're confident? You have a magnetic aura? Would you say that you're attractive? I don't know. But whatever pops into your mind first, that is what your self-concept is, or at least a little bit of your self-concept, at least when it comes to you as a person, your actual identity. So, if you were to say things to yourself like, money never comes easy to me, I'm never chosen when it comes to love, or I'm not attractive enough, you are telling your subconscious these things that many times, it accepts it as truth. Your subconscious isn't going to fight whatever you say, it will just listen to you. So your 3D world has no choice but to reflect that back to you. That's why Neville Goddard says the world is like a mirror. So I'm going to try and use a few little anecdotes so that if you didn't understand what I just said, I want this to click for you, okay? So let's see if one of these works. Firstly, Neville Goddard's mirror analogy. Let's say you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're frowning. What will you see reflected back to you? Yourself frowning. So if you wanted your reflection to smile back at you, what would you have to do? You would have to smile yourself, and then the mirror will reflect it back to you. Not because the mirror has an opinion or it has a choice or a mind of its own, it's purely just reflecting back what you give it. And that's the same as your 3D world. Your reality works in this exact same way. If you want to be someone who's confident, who's attractive, who has a magnetic aura, someone who's always loved, you have to first embody that within your self-concept and act as if that is already you. And then the mirror, your 3D world, will have no choice but to reflect that back to you. Another way you can look at this is through the lens of the soil analogy, which is another one of Neville Goddard's anecdotes, analogies, whatever. If, for example, you have soil, no matter what seeds you plant, those seeds will grow. Especially if you water those seeds, they will grow as well. So if these seeds in question are things like you saying, I can't manifest this, I haven't been able to shift to my desired reality, I can't do it, I just can't do it, nothing's working. Whatever it is, your subconscious won't fight those thoughts, those seeds will just be planted and they will grow, especially if you feed into those thoughts and you keep feeding into them, keep thinking about them until it becomes overpowering. That's the seed growing bigger and bigger and bigger. So imagine if you were to have healthy, fertile soil. and you were to plant seeds such as, I am a master manifester, I can manifest things with ease, I can change my reality with a click of a finger, I have my desired body, I am with my specific person. It doesn't even matter if it's the tiniest of seeds, that seed will be planted and it will grow beautifully, especially if you water that seed. You keep thinking those positive assumptions, you keep thinking about those positive self-concepts. They will grow. Another thing I want to point out as well, and it's quite important to be fair, nobody in this life is special. And you might think, Kiera, why the fuck are you saying that? What do you mean? When you see people, whether it's on social media or people who you know personally, achieving their goals, living out their dream life according to you, you see them as special because they've been able to fully embody a positive self-concept and really cultivate it. That's what makes them seem special. They don't see themselves as, oh, I'm better than everyone else kind of way. They've worked their ass off to not only have that positive self-concept, but to maintain that so that they can achieve all of these things that they have in life. And they deserve to sit at those tables because of that. So no one is really special in this life. They just know that their thoughts, their beliefs shape what they see around them, and they've had proof of that through a negative concept and even a positive one, but they've chosen to really double down on maintaining a positive self-concept in order for them to reap the rewards from it. Now here's one more analogy. If those other analogies didn't click for you, I hope to God that this one does. Think of your life as a show and you're the main character, but not in the way that you see on TikTok. I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So obviously when you're playing a character, you have a script to follow. The script in question is your subconscious. So if in the script it says stuff like, my character is unlucky, they're never lucky in love, they're always short of money, they're not attractive, they're unlovable, that's what's going to play out in the show because that's what's written in the script. You have the ability to change that script whenever you want and however you see fit. So you can change this script being like, people are drawn to me because of how attractive I am. I am the most confident person alive. I attract money so easily. You're writing that in the script, therefore that will be in your show. And because you're changing the script, everything else about the show, the side characters, the opportunities, all of that type of stuff, they will adapt to match what you've added into the script. Now let's use some real life manifestation examples, and I'm just going to use like the most common things that people want to manifest, right? So firstly, if you want to manifest physical appearance changes, because yes, you can do that. I've done that. If you want to manifest, for example, let's say like a button nose, thicker lips, glass skin, your desired physique, lighter eye colour, whatever it is. If you're telling yourself, I never look good, nothing ever works, that is a negative concept. You can do all of the visualization in the world, but if you have a negative self-concept, what's really going to change? Nothing. So instead, you need to change this negative self-concept into a positive one, telling yourself that you always radiate confidence. Your looks always align with how you want yourself to look. You're beautiful, both on the inside and the out. And that's when you'll actually see the results start to come. You can look through my past videos, even from like 2 years ago or further, and you can see the physical changes in me. I've lost weight in my face. I look a lot healthier. I don't look as washed, you know? I have a lot more colour to me. That is purely down to having a positive self-concept. My acne went as well. Do you see the skin? Clear as fuck, right? All down to positive self-concept. Similar way goes if you want to manifest an SP, a specific person, to those of you who don't know. So, if you want to manifest somebody to, I don't know, either be friends with you, or if you want to be in a relationship with a specific person, but you'll keep telling yourself, oh, they'll never choose me, I'm never chosen anyway, I'm so unlucky when it comes to this shit. That is what your 3D will play out, because that's your self-concept. So instead you need to change your self-concept into saying that this person is literally obsessed with me, I'm magnetic, that's why they're drawn to me, they want to talk to me, stuff like that. If you want financial abundance but you'll keep telling yourself that you're always short of money, that it doesn't come easy to you, that you're broke, what's going to happen? Your situation will never change if you think like that. You have to change that mindset. You have to flip it on its head. You need to tell yourself that you always just fall into money. It just comes to you. You don't even have to do anything. All you have to do is actually just breathe, and money will just fly your way. Even if you are a person who likes to shift to their DR, which I know many of you like to do that. If you're telling yourself things like, oh, I've been trying for X amount of years and I haven't seen any results, or I've been trying this method but nothing's working, I just can't do it. No wonder you haven't shifted yet, deliberately. You have to change that self-concept, saying that you shift with ease. Shifting comes natural to you. You've always been able to do it, and you will always continue to have that ability. It never leaves you. You're a master shifter, okay? But see how it always comes back to your self-concept, no matter what it is that you want to attract into your life. It always comes back to your self-concept, either about your identity or how you see the world treating you, like how you see your life panning out. Now, I'm not going to tell you the theory of all this without telling you how to change your self-concept, because I want all of you guys who watch this video to be able to live out your desires, to be able to live your dream life. I'm going to tell you how to make your negative self-concept a much more positive one. First thing you have to do is understand what you're feeding your brain. Understand your mental diet. What's a mental diet? It's exactly what it says on the tin. You need to kind of become a whole lot more aware of the inner conversations that you're having with yourself, the thoughts that you're thinking, but also the stuff that you hear around you, that you consume, that you kind of let soak in there. You need to understand, okay, what thoughts am I having that is triggering a negative self-concept, or what's causing this negative concept? What am I thinking about that's hindering my manifestations? This could be, for example, the thought of, oh, I can't manifest. My results aren't showing in my 3D, so clearly I'm not capable. I can't do it. Nothing works. Those are just a few examples of having a negative self-concept. You talking to yourself, telling yourself that you're unable. What I want you to do is, whenever you feel any one of these kind of thoughts cropping up into your mind, I want you to grab it and flip it straight away, because we're changing our mental diet in order to feed it positivity, so that we can manifest these things. The next thing we're going to do is repetition. Our subconscious really soaks in these thoughts and assumptions through repetition. The reason why is because when we repeat stuff to ourselves over and over again, it's creating a neural pathway, or it's rewiring one that used to be there. So when you're telling yourself all these negative things about you being unable to manifest this, not really being financially abundant, being unlovable, the more you tell that to yourself, the more you're strengthening those neural pathways. So when you want to maintain a strong positive self-concept, the more you visualize, the more you affirm, and the more you persist with doing these things, the stronger those neural pathways will become for you. They'll get stronger to the point where your new story that you fed to yourself will become the default story. It will be natural for your brain to think that way. Now, this next step is where your actions link with your identity. This next step, embodied alignment or intended action. You basically want to try and link an action with these positive self-concepts. So let's say if you want to manifest clear skin, create a skincare routine. It doesn't even have to be advanced. I can tell you how simple my skincare routine is. It doesn't have to be some 15-step thing. Just create a skincare routine. And whenever you carry out this skincare routine, you're telling yourself how grateful you are to have this clear skin, how happy you are that you have no acne anymore, you never have spots, even if you're not on your time of the month, if you are AFAB. The same thing if you want to achieve your desired physique, if you want to manifest your desired body, if you're, for example, working out at the gym, or even if you're doing stretching or at-home workout or walking outside. You could tell yourself how grateful you are to have a healthy, desired body, and you can add in the details of how exactly that looks for you. These actions kind of act like anchors for your subconscious, because your subconscious will start linking the actions that you're doing with the belief that you're telling yourself, so it will deepen that belief even more so. The next thing that you want to do, which is kind of linked to the embodiment alignment, identity shifting. This is basically where you think about, okay, how would the version of me who already has these desires, how would they act, how would they think, and how would they feel? And once you get that down, once you know exactly what that version of you thinks like, how they act like, how they feel like, what they do with their life and whatever, start embodying that now. It's like, don't just say that you're confident, be confident, not in a faking way. You're just embodying that version of yourself who is already confident. And that, my friends, is an identity shift. This one is another big one, and it might seem hard to do for some people when they first think about it, but it honestly is a lot more easier than you'd think. Surrounding yourself with people, with content that you consume, environments that reflect, that reinforce what your new self-concept is. If you're surrounded by people, for example, if you want to manifest money, if you're constantly surrounding yourself with people who are always talking about their lack of money, who are always complaining about their financial situation, what is going to change? Because again, back to the mental diet, what you're consuming around you affects your self-concept a lot more than you think. So if you want to manifest money, again, as the example, like I said, you want to stop surrounding yourself with things that glorify the lack of money. And this final step is probably the most important one on this list, because this can either make it or break it. Persistence. You can't just do one of these things for a week and then expect an abundance of change, because that's not how it works. I'm pretty sure it takes like 21 days to form a habit in the first place. It takes time to erase these old thoughts and make your new self-concept the default story in your mind. So naturally, when you first start out with this, the old thoughts are gonna crop up a bit more than you'd expect, but you just have to persist. You just have to know that what you're doing will reap its rewards by the end. It is worth it. You just have to stick with it. Like I said, if you try this out for like a week and then you don't see the results, one, why are you trusting the 3D? The 3D just has to catch up, it's lagging. And two, it's just not going to help your situation. So just stay persistent. It's very kind of like, not wishy-washy, that's not really the right word. A lot of people say like keep persistent, keep going, don't give up. But genuinely, that's all it is. So changing your self-concept isn't about this fake it till you make it thing. It's about aligning yourself with the person who you really are. Your higher self, if you will. Someone who's abundant, someone who's financially free, someone who's loved, magnetic, attractive, beautiful. How many other adjectives that you'd want to use to describe your new self. And quite simply, if you don't like what's reflecting back in your 3D world, the first thing you have to do is change your self-concept, and then the 3D will have no choice but to catch up with your current assumptions, because that's all the 3D has been doing for your whole entire life. Before you even knew what manifesting was, every assumption that you've had has manifested into your life. You're now just taking advantage of that law. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. In today's video, we are delving into talking about part 2 of self-concept. If you haven't already watched my first video about self-concept, I highly recommend that you do so, because that's the video where we delve into what exactly self-concept is, how to understand where your self-concept is currently at, more importantly, how to shift it. So if you haven't watched that video, go and watch that first and then come back here, because in this video we're going to be going into the more deeper parts of self-concept, but more so how to make your self-concept unshakable and unbreakable despite whatever the 3D tries to throw at you. Because let's be real, the 3D doesn't just roll out a red carpet as soon as it sees that you're deciding to change your self-concept. As we already know by now, when it comes to creating a new assumption about who you are or how life treats you, the 3D kind of lags a little bit. So if, for example, you decide that you want to be confident now, the 3D is like, oh, you're confident now? Okay, bet. Here are 3 rejection emails, and let's just make a few of your friends talk about you behind your back. And that's the exact moment where you either stay solid in yourself or you begin to wobble. So by the end of this video, you guys should hopefully be able to know how to keep yourself solid when the 3D throws that kind of stuff at you. So let's get straight to it. So you're probably asking, okay, Kiera, why does having an unshakable self-concept matter? Well, when it comes to manifesting literally anything, it doesn't matter what techniques you use, it doesn't matter how long you visualize before you go to sleep, it doesn't matter if you spent weeks trying to curate the perfect affirmations to use. While these are really good tools to help with your manifestation, they will only be as strong as the person who's using them. If deep down you believe that you're unworthy, that you're not loved, that you're not capable, and whatever it is, the 3D will just reflect that back to you because it has no choice to. And sometimes even after you've worked on yourself self-concept, the 3D, like I said earlier in the video, will still lag a little bit. You know, it will take a little bit of time for your 3D to actually show you your current assumptions. And that lag can really, really test you. Think of it like this. If you're at the gym and your goal is to build muscle, if you give up after every single session because you're not seeing the results, you're literally not going to get anywhere. The same goes with self-concept. All you have to do is just build up that consistency until your current assumptions are the default thought process in your mind, and therefore the results are inevitable. So the goal here isn't to feel good when things are easy. It's all about how to root yourself in your identity when things in the 3D aren't really showing you the things that you want to see. And that is what makes an unbreakable self-concept. Think of it like this. Your self-concept is like that really annoying kid at the playground in primary school, elementary school, that will try and get a reaction out of you. They'll try and poke you to see how you react. And if you start crying or you get upset, they've done what they want to do. But if you stop reacting, then that kid will get bored. And self-concept works in the exact same way. If you throw the whole self-concept thing out the window whenever something negative happens to you, then what's gonna happen? Your manifestations are obviously not going to come to you. You're teaching your subconscious that your identity is conditional. Well, that basically means that your identity exists only if the 3D agrees. So rule number 1 of creating an unbreakable self-concept is you need to stop letting the 3D bully you. And there are many, many ways that you can do this, but here are just a few things that I want you guys to remember. So I want you guys to not abandon the identity that you've chosen for yourself, no matter what pops up in your 3D world. You don't spiral just because somebody said something that you either didn't agree with or you didn't like. And you don't let temporary circumstances dictate your permanent truth. And look, I get it, it's very easier said than done, because sometimes it feels that the 3D is screaming at you a whole lot louder than the affirmations that you're trying to say to yourself or the visualizations that you're trying to get into your mind. But this is exactly why we're learning to make our self-concept unbreakable, and this is why we are practicing creating an unbreakable self-concept, because we're just training our mind to stay loyal to the version of ourselves who we actually want to be. So let's get into some practical ways that can teach your brain how to have this unshakable self-concept. We're going to teach the brain to stay loyal to it. Who's messaged me? Oh my god, my sister's 13 followers away from 1k on TikTok. I'll leave her TikTok on the screen. If you love parenting mom content, follow my sister on TikTok. Like, her videos are really cool. That's not even me being biased. Anyway, back to it. Here are some practical things that you can do right now today that can help you to teach your brain to stay loyal to this unshakable self-concept that you want to make for yourself. So every time you catch yourself wobbling, I want you to run a quick mental rehearsal in your mind as the version of you who doesn't wobble. Now, that might seem a bit confusing at first, but here's an example that can probably make it easy for you to understand. If your new self-concept is the fact that you're always chosen, yet when you text one of your friends, they take ages to reply, or they just don't respond at all. Instead of spiraling and overthinking about it, I want you to think, oh, that's weird, because I'm literally always chosen. Do you see what I'm doing? Do you see what I'm doing? It doesn't matter how fake it feels at first, because obviously if you're new to all of this, it'll feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's all about teaching your subconscious this new default reaction. When your brain tries to spiral, interrupt it. It can literally be you saying something as simple as, no, that's not how we think anymore. What are we doing? I do this so much. It doesn't matter how often you catch yourself doing this, because it's just the training process. The longer you stick with it, the less often you have to remind your brain to think that way, because it's slowly becoming the default thought process, right? Humor can actually help you disarm the spiral a bit. So if you kind of try and make yourself laugh when you're talking to yourself in this way, that can help a lot. Now, I know I say, okay, don't pay attention to the 3D. Your circumstances don't mean anything. The 3D isn't proof of anything. But when it comes to self-concept, if you're really struggling to see proof, so to say, that your self-concept is real, that it's true, I want you to either keep a mental note or use your notes app, or actually physically write it down, of every time something pops up in your life that shows you your new self-concept. If somebody compliments you in the way that you want them to, screenshot it, write it down. If you've had a day where you felt really confident and you've done things that really made you step out of your comfort zone without even feeling awkward about it, without feeling, oh, that was weird, write that down. Because over time, you're just building evidence to prove that your self-concept is there, it is true, it is real. It doesn't even matter if the 3D is still lagging, your self-concept is there. Watch how you speak about yourself, even if it's just in passing conversation with just a random person on the street. If you're saying to yourself or saying things about yourself like, oh, I'm always so awkward, or I'm never lucky with money, then that's just going to reinforce your old self-concept, and that's obviously not what we want. So I want you to swap that language out with more neutral or positive versions. Obviously, it doesn't need to be too dramatic or anything, it just needs to align with your new self-concept. Now let's talk about the tests again, because when you're deciding that you want to adopt this new self-concept, it can be really, really hard to keep and maintain that self-concept if the 3D is showing you the complete opposite of what you want it to. But here's the reframe that I want you guys to remember. It's not a test that will make you fail. It's an opportunity for you to choose the new version of yourself. And every time that you'd respond in the new self-concept version of yourself, then you're locking in that identity even more. Think of it like leveling up in a video game. In most games, there's like a boss fight before you move on to the next level. And it's not there to kind of make you fail. It's there to prove that you're ready to move on to the next part. So the next time the 3D wants to throw shade at you, just remember, oh, this is just a boss fight. All I need to do is just beat this and then just move on to the next level. And honestly, making this a more fun experience can help it become a lot more sustainable. Play around with different versions of your self-concept until you find something that works the best for you. You can laugh at your old spirals because honestly, like I said earlier, I do that all the time. Celebrate the small wins like you're literally... Why is my light turning off? 1 second, guys. As I was saying, celebrate your small wins like you're literally winning an Oscar and you're gonna like talk about your award speech. You maintaining your self-concept doesn't have to feel like homework. It's literally just deciding who you want to be and just having fun with it. So yeah, that is how you can make your self-concept unbreakable, unshakable, however you want to describe it. Again, like I said earlier, it is easier said than done, but if you keep consistent with it and you stay persistent, you will reap the rewards that you deserve. I want to see you guys living your best life. Most people think that manifestation's all about the scripting, the visualizing, the journaling, but those are actually some of the slowest ways to manifest. And the true cheat code is the fact that you'll see results faster the second your identity changes. Because if you're still seeing yourself as the old version of you, the person who struggles, the person who overthinks, the person who always gets close but not quite there, the person who doubts, your subconscious will block every single thing that you say that you want, even if you're doing all of the steps right. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you the exact identity process that I use in order to manifest fast, including the moment I realized that I was actually manifesting against myself, and the literal 30-second identity shift exercise that changed everything for me. So let's get straight to it. You know how most manifestation advice out there is stuff like think positive thoughts, visualize everything, feel the feelings. Like, yeah, that's cute, you know, I do them, but they're not the whole picture. Here's the real issue. You can't outperform your identity. You can only manifest what feels normal to you. So you can sit there saying, I'm rich. But if your identity is still stuck in the mindset of I've always struggled with money, then your subconscious is going to be like, let's struggle instead, because that thought feels the most normal to your subconscious. But the minute your identity changes though, that's when your behaviors change. That's when your expectation changes. The opportunities that you even attract change. Everything just changes instantly. And trust me, because I figured this out the hard way. Okay, so story time. When I was kind of in the earlier stages of my manifestation journey and I'd want something to manifest fast, I'd do everything. I'd visualize, I'd script, I'd affirm, I'd do everything, right? But nothing was moving and nothing was progressing within the 3D. And then one morning I literally caught myself asking, why is everything always so hard for me? And that single sentence alone exposed my whole identity. Because underneath everything that I was doing, underneath, you know, all the techniques that I was trying and everything like that, was the identity that I'm somebody who things don't work out for. Like, no wonder I wasn't manifesting shit, because that was what was blocking me. It wasn't the universe that was blocking me. It wasn't anything external. It wasn't the timing. It was literally just me. But once I shifted my identity, no joke, things sped up so quick when it came to manifestations that I wanted. So here is the exact process that I used. Step 1 is simple, but it's a step that a lot of people tend to avoid. You have to write down who you currently believe you are in a specific area of life where you're trying to manifest something. So whether it be money, love, confidence, career, basically whatever you're trying to manifest, right? And yeah, it does feel uncomfortable when you do this because you're seeing things that in other contexts you're pretending is in there. But I want you to realize that you can't shift what you refuse to acknowledge. And then when you start to write these things down, you'll start to notice these hidden identity scripts. And these are just a few examples. Obviously, you know, everybody's different, but some of your hidden identity scripts could be things like, I always get close, but things fall through. People don't choose me, I'm inconsistent, I never have enough, good things don't last. And then when you look down to your page and you see all of these hidden identity scripts that you've written down, you'll literally realise, this is the stuff that I've been manifesting. No wonder my affirmations haven't been working. No wonder fuck all's been happening. And once you see the old identity clearly, it makes step 2 so much more easier. Your brain only believes what it has evidence for. So it doesn't care about your Pinterest board. Sorry to break it to you. It cares about patterns. So if your evidence is, for example, I've always struggled, guess what you're going to experience? More experiences where you struggle. But here's the trick. You can create new evidence before things start to change externally. You can literally say, I am the kind of person who blank. And then you do one tiny action that matches that identity. It doesn't have to change your life. It's just one small action. So let's say if your new evidence is, I'm the kind of person who opportunities always find. Your tiny action to do with that to match that identity might be answering a DM, answering an email, or showing up more confidently in the future to an event or whatever. And that tiny action becomes your brain's new proof. And that's what speed up manifestations like crazy. But step 3 is where the real magic happens, right? So listen. Okay, this is the fast manifestation method. And no joke, it literally takes 30 seconds. And a lot of people don't do this because it seems too easy. But that's exactly why it works. Now, here's what you do. I want you to sit down, close your eyes, have a quiet moment to yourself, and ask this question to yourself in your mind. What would the version of me who already has my manifestation believe about themselves right now? Not tomorrow, not in the future, but right now. And then whatever comes up in your mind, that is your new identity. And that is where I want you to shift your frequency into. And I want you to hold space for 30 seconds. And then let your body feel everything so that your nervous system can recognize this as a normal feeling for you. And then after this exercise, you'll notice your behavior shifting without you needing to force a thing. Now, let me show you exactly how this played out for me. When I did this exercise that I talked about earlier on, everything in my life shifted within 72 hours, no fucking joke. And it's not because I manifested harder or that I started repeating the same affirmation 9,000 times. It's because I started acting like someone who expects good things to happen to them all the time. And when you expect good things to happen to you all the time, you make different choices without even forcing yourself to do that. I'm talking opportunities literally flew out of nowhere. I'm talking the Curlwell partnership I spoke about in one of my previous videos. Working with Umberto Giannini, I'm literally getting another PR package from them within a few days. People showed up and showed their support for what I was doing with social media. Conversations opened. I started talking to people who were interested in doing social media and they thought I could give advice to them because they didn't know where to start. But the main thing is the thing I wanted actually arrived. It showed up in the fucking 3D so fast. And the wildest part about it all is that it didn't feel like a miracle. It just felt normal. Because that's what identity does. It makes your desires feel like a baseline. They don't seem like some fucking miracle thing oh my god, I've just seen Jesus walk on water, what the fuck? It just feels normal to you because this version of you expects this stuff to happen. It's normal. So here's the truth. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. And then when your identity shifts, your reality has no choice but to mold itself around your inner world to reflect what's going on in your mind. It has no choice but to reorganize itself based on who you think of yourself to be. So if you want fast results, it's not all about changing your thoughts. You have to change you. And then everything else will follow. You don't have a mindset problem, you just have a subconscious mind that thinks that your dream life is a threat. I know that you've probably been scripting, affirming, attempting to live from the end for a long, long time. Yet, reality doesn't seem to be changing. It looks as if it's stuck in cement, to put it one way. But what if I were to tell you that blocking yourself is actually one of the smartest things that your brain could do in this scenario? Today, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how your manifestations being blocked is actually being done on purpose. I'm also going to be talking to you guys about how you can flip the switch in your subconscious mind so that it finally feels safe enough to let your new reality in. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stop fighting yourself so you can actually live out your manifestations and so that you can move through your manifestation journey with ease. So in this community, we talk a lot about, the 3Ds, a mirror, loads of different law of assumption things, but there's this one element that will keep people in a really, really frustrating loop that's hard to get out of. It's hard to even realize that you're in it in the first place, but I'm going to talk about it here. Most manifestation advice treat your brain like a computer. You try and insert new files, these new files being things like affirmations and visualizations and things like that, to replace old files, which in this context are your limiting beliefs. But your brain isn't a computer. It's a biological survival machine. So when you manifest more massive shifts in your life, whether it be like a specific person, a six-figure income, maybe you want to be famous, I don't know. To your conscious mind, that is just a dream. But to our nervous system, it's unfamiliar. And when we put survival logic on things, unfamiliar to our nervous system equals dangerous. So around a year ago was when I really started noticing this whole your brain is not a computer type thing that I'm talking about here. Around a year ago, that's when I decided that I wanted to take my content creation journey a lot more seriously. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously then, but I wanted to, double down. And I'd watch manifestation videos that would tell me to start living from the end, acting as if, journaling as my desired self and all that kind of stuff. So I was putting in the work. So therefore in my mind, in my imagination, the 4D, I was this version of me. I was this full-time content creator. But every time I felt like I was making progress, something in my mind would make me reel back to the old version of me. Maybe I'd kind of pick a reason in the 3D that made me think, okay, I might need to put the brakes on this manifestation. I might need to take a pause, take a breather, take a moment, go back and learn more, and then go back into it. You know what I mean? And then I used to judge myself at the same time. I'd tell myself, Kiera, you're literally self-sabotaging. So clearly you don't want your manifestation enough. But then something that I realized is that I didn't not want my manifestation enough. I wanted it so much that change to my nervous system felt like a threat. It felt like a threat to the version of me that has kept me safe for the past 20 years that I've been on this earth. So that's when I came to the conclusion that I wasn't myself blocked as what I thought I was. I was just being protected by a version of myself that wasn't ready to, be cut off, to be changed. And this form of protection, according to my nervous system, is what I want to call in this video my internal safety switch. I want you to think of your internal safety switch like a surge protector in kind of like an electrical kind of anecdote. Let me land right. So if you're trying to push your new identity through your current wiring, your new identity is high voltage. Your current nervous system is a lower voltage, right? So if you're trying to push your new identity through your current wiring, your safety switch will turn off to prevent your nervous system from frying. And this is the exact reason why high vibe manifestations and false positivity often fails, because you're trying to force a high voltage reality, a high voltage version of you into a low voltage nervous system. It just won't work. So if you feel anxious while you're thinking about your manifestation, or you feel kind of like an impending sense of doom when you think about this new version of yourself that you want to become, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It's literally just a sign that your safety switch, your internal safety switch, is on. You're basically overstimulated by your own potential. So how can we turn this switch back on without sending our body into a state of panic, right? Here are 3 different ways that you can do it. So, firstly, stop over-affirming. I know that robotic affirmations are quite a popular technique, and they can work for some kind of surface level affirmations that don't require self-concept rewiring, identity work, nervous system work, and things like that. But if you're telling yourself 500 affirmations a day, that to your subconscious mind, it's taking it as you're saying these in a state of panic. You're saying these affirmations from a state of desperation. One calm assumption will be a lot more powerful than 1,000 different affirmations said from a state of panic. Secondly, and this one has to do with visualization. When you do visualize, if you do use that technique, I want you to instead try and find the sigh instead of a high. Now you're probably thinking, Kiera, what the heck does that mean? Let me explain. Usually when we visualize, we kind of want to find the high in that moment. We want that dopamine hit from visualizing that specific moment. But what I want you to figure out when you're visualizing anything to do with your manifestation, do you feel a sense of relief when you're visualizing this? Do you get a thought in your mind that's like, of course this has happened to me because it's me? Does it feel normal to you to visualize this? Because if it doesn't, it means that your manifestation is still too big for your nervous system to handle. It's too high voltage for your nervous system to handle. The third thing I want you to do is to start proving to your body that you can handle unfamiliar situations in small doses at first. So this can literally be as simple as walking a different way to work or to school, changing up your routine a little, because you want to prove to your mind that new equals safe. Unfamiliar equals safe. Your 3D reality isn't stuck because you're a bad manifestor or you've been doing things wrong. None of that. It's stuck because your body is waiting for you to prove that you can handle this new version of yourself that you're becoming. Therefore, you can handle the reality that the 3D is going to reflect back in your face. So you don't need any more techniques. You don't need any more different ways of thinking when it comes to manifestation. You just need a little bit more of regulation. So the moment you stop seeing your blocks as something bad, when you stop seeing your blocks as some sort of enemy and you instead start seeing it as just your body's way of protecting you from unfamiliar situations, it just needs a bit of reassurance. Think of it like you're giving your nervous system like a hug, in a way. And the moment your nervous system has that reassurance, imagine, right, the floodgates open and your new reality just comes crashing through. That's literally what will happen. You don't have to fight for your reality. You just have to be a safe place for this new reality to land. You've probably seen so many videos to do a manifestation talking about how you have to detach from said manifestation. And there are mixed feelings when this topic comes up, because a lot of people think, okay, when I have to detach from my manifestation, I have to basically give up on my dream. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Is that what it's all about? Calm down, okay? Today's video is going to be all about why detaching doesn't mean you have to just stop caring about your manifestation. All that we're doing here is not giving a fuck about how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, so that we're actually working with our 4D and with our internal state. We don't want to fight it anymore, okay? So let's not waffle too much and get straight into the video. Okay, so let's first set something straight. The difference between desiring and caring, because there's a reason you want to manifest the things that you want, right? You wouldn't manifest a car if you didn't want one. You wouldn't manifest being in a relationship if you didn't want to be in a relationship at the moment, right? So to an extent, there has to be a level of care. You care about this thing enough in order to want it in your reality, to want to manifest it. So let's just get that out into the open right now. You still have to care about your manifestation. It's human to care about things that you want, things that you desire, things that you aspire to have, traits that you aspire to want to have in the future. Where I think the struggle begins is when people, especially if they're new to the manifestation community or they haven't been taught any differently, when they start to rely on the techniques and trusting the techniques more than their own mind. As we know on this channel, I love talking about manifestation in a way that doesn't feel forceful, that will lead to burnout. Manifestation is meant to feel stress-free. It's meant to feel natural. We all deserve to have what we want, okay? And that's all thanks to our internal state. It's all thanks to our 4D. The second we decide that something is true, that something is ours in the 4D, that is manifested. That assumption's there. And literally immediately, even if you don't see it, the 3D is conforming. There's a reality where the 3D is already conformed. You're already your desired self. You're already living your desired life. So as I said, the struggle comes in when some people feel as though they have to be using methods in order to get to that outcome, whether it be visualizing, scripting, affirming, whether it be through robotic affirming or just general affirmations, whatever. I feel like those are like the main three techniques that other techniques kind of build themselves around anyway. A lot of people think that the technique is what makes the manifestation happen, but it's actually you. The techniques kind of help you get your mind in the right headspace. They're like a little prompts that will kind of, shove you into the door frame to kind of get you through. You know what I mean? But they're not needed. They're not a requirement because, as I said, you are the source. You are the creator of your reality. You are the writer of your script, the author of your story. I could say it in so many different ways. Your internal state is fact. Your assumptions to your subconscious, to your internal state are true. Whether those assumptions are about yourself, about other people, about the world, literally everything. And that is what the 3D reflects off. So it's literally all about you, okay? Which brings me on to something which is kind of linked, but I feel like it's still really important to say. Some people think, well, I don't want to detach from my manifestation because I want it to happen like quickly. I want it to happen now. To cut a long story short, time is literally a social construct. It's a man-made thing. Time doesn't exist. We are living in the now. Past, present and future are all happening at the same time. It might not feel that way, but trust it is. Remember the internal state, the 4D. Everything that we assume about our past, about our present, even about our future, what's happened in the past, what is happening now, and what will happen, that's all in here. That has happened. There's timelines where all of this is happening at once. It's a whole other rabbit hole. If you want to go and look into that into your own time, highly suggest it. But the only way time will feel like it's not passing quick enough when it comes to your manifestations is if you're checking the 3D too much, which obviously we don't want to do when it comes to our manifestations, because firstly, if you already had your manifestation, then why would you be checking for it? You're literally looking for nothing otherwise. And secondly, which is kind of just linked to the first thing, you already have it in your internal state, in your 4D. There's a reality out there where you already have that thing, but it's becoming aware of that reality and stepping into it. 3D is conforming, bitch. And that's when waiting will just become irrelevant, because as I say, if you already have that specific character trait to yourself, if you already own that car, if you already live in that penthouse, if you're already in that relationship, if you already have that, I don't know, new iPhone, whatever, waiting becomes irrelevant. There's nothing to wait for. Does that make sense? Bringing back the concept of time. Time is a social construct. You already have that phone, for example. Now, the 3D might not show it, but in your 4D, you decide you have that iPhone is yours, okay? Who gives a fuck what the 3D shows you right now? If you trust your mind enough to just wholly trust your assumption, you won't need to constantly be checking the 3D because you trust your mind enough. Now we can talk about the so what mentality. I've spoken about this a lot in my previous videos, so if you're a regular watcher, I hope you're not getting bored of this, but pretty much, regardless of what the 3D shows you, whether it's something that you don't like, something that doesn't align with your manifestation, you can just say so what, because you trust your internal state that much, that regardless of whatever the 3D is showing you, you know, I hold the power to this reality. I speak things into existence once, and the 3D conforms. Why? Because I'm that bitch. Well, I'm the creator, but you get what I mean. What you need to do, this is where the detachment really comes in. Stop micromanaging the how and the when. When it comes to manifestation, especially if you're new, or if you've been taught a specific way or whatever, we're obviously taught to believe that we can control whatever goes on in our reality, so therefore we feel as though we naturally have to control how things are happening or when things are happening, because that kind of comes in the package, right? But not really, no. Literally, it doesn't matter what it is you're specifically trying to manifest, whether it be a text, an email, a random encounter, a free coffee at, I don't know, your favourite cafe that you go to, whatever it is. Your job is to just live in the end state of already having that thing. You don't have to worry about how it's going to happen or when. You don't need to. If you give your power to just that random thought, you're giving your power away to the 3D. You're giving your power away to things that don't deserve it. The power, the remote control, let's use that example, is in your hands. You get to choose what goes on. As I say, your only job is to live in the end, to live in the state of the wish fulfilled. You already have your manifestation in the 4D. Look, honestly, this video feels a lot more like a broken record than my videos usually do. Like, you need to really, I feel like when it comes to detachment, this isn't even on my notes on my phone. I feel like when it comes to detachment, the main thing you have to do is trust yourself and your mind. And I know I've probably spoken this about like 3 different times in this video, but I just need to stress it again. I don't even feel like I can stress it enough than I already am. You need to be able to trust your own mind. As I said, the techniques don't do the manifesting. I don't do the manifesting for you. It is you that's doing all of this stuff. Even if it's like the smaller things that you've manifested. I say smaller in quotation marks because there's no such thing as a big manifestation or a smaller manifestation. Everything's on the same, even level playing field. We don't want to place anything on a pedestal. It doesn't matter what it is you've specifically manifested. That's you. You've done that. Your mind has done that. And 3D is reflected as it's supposed to. But, you've done that work. So Pat on the back to you firstly, because, you know, you did all that. You did that. But back to what was actually planned in the notes. When you try to speed things up with your manifestation, try a bunch of techniques, robotically affirm like your life fucking depends on it, from a state of I need to like, you know, try harder, I need to do this quicker, I want this manifestation now. You're literally shouting to the universe that you don't have your manifestation yet. As I said earlier, why would I be trying to get my manifestation if I already had it? You see what I mean? The real speed, if you really want speed with your manifestations, the real speed comes from the relaxation that it's already done in the 4D, which brings us back to, you know, trusting yourself, trusting the power that you already have, the innate power that you already have. Is that the correct word to use? Like, most of you are using techniques like they're a lucky charm that's, you know, getting you the power. Or you'll maybe use crystals, for example, because I collect crystals. I use them more so for my energy. They don't do the manifesting either. I do that, okay? A lot of people tend to attach themselves to something that they believe helps them to get that power. This is the reason I have this power. My lucky charm, let's say, my lucky bracelet, my lucky, I don't know, t-shirt, whatever. Like, they think that something else is what's bringing them the power, when in reality, it is you. The only reason why you probably think that that lucky necklace works for you is because you assume that, which again is another example of manifestation working. The universe always says yes. Your 4D will always say yes. It will always agree. It won't fight your thoughts. It will just say, okay, bet, and just reflect it into your reality. The reason why you might have a lucky necklace is because you assume it's lucky. Maybe something that you've experienced in the 3D has led you to that assumption that that necklace is lucky. And that assumption has been reflected back into your reality. But it's not the necklace, it is you. You're the lucky charm, in a way. So there's no need to negotiate about your power. We all have this ability. We've been having this ability for like our whole entire lives without even realising it. So why now do we question that ability? Because there are now different names for different techniques, or now we know that what we've been doing is just the law of assumption in action. It's not just luck. It's not just a one-time fluke. You know, why now do we have to put all the pressure onto ourselves because what we've been doing our whole entire lives has a name? There's no need to. We've always had that power. We don't want to give that power away to things that, quite frankly, don't deserve that power. The techniques. Other people on social media, I am not the reason you're manifesting stuff. I give you the tips. I make you realise the power that you have within you. I don't manifest stuff for you. But if any of you are struggling with exactly, you know, how to let go of the how and the whens to do with your manifestation, my Inner State Reset Masterclass has everything that you need in order to make that detachment just part of your natural state. The link to that masterclass is in the description. I also offer one-to-one coaching now, so all the details about that will be linked below too. For months, I was trying to manifest. I'd repeat affirmations, I'd constantly listen to subliminals, I'd visualize all the time like it was a full-time job, and I'd keep thinking to myself, what am I doing wrong? But then one day, it hit me. The real manifestation doesn't happen when you're trying. The manifestation happens when you start being. What if there is a version of you out there that already has everything that you want, and all you have to do is to embody that version of yourself? That's what we're talking about in this video, because that's where your power actually lies. Let's be real, when it comes to manifestation, most people are stuck in the energy of trying. They're doing all of the right things, they're affirming, they're journaling, they're visualizing, but it's all coming from a state of, I don't have it yet. And when your subconscious hears, I don't have it yet, it will just reflect situations back to you that match that assumption. And it's not your fault, because we've all been there. I've been here, especially quite recently, where I've been repeating thoughts so much to a point that my subconscious has like gripped onto them, and therefore my reality has reflected back a story that matches what's going on in my head. But back at the beginning of my manifestation journey, more so when I really started doubling down on law of assumption and actually understanding what it meant, I used to be checking for signs for proof in my 3D all the time. I'd always be asking myself, is everything working? Why isn't my manifestation here? But here's the thing, the more you look for proof, the more you're telling yourself that your manifestation isn't done, it's not here. You can't attract something into your life whilst you're reaffirming its absence at the same time. And once I understood this, that's when everything shifted for me. Because instead of trying to get there, I instead decided to start from there. So let's talk about embodiment, because I feel that it's one of those terms that people throw around a lot and they don't really explain what it is. To embody something means to live from the state of the wish fulfilled, not towards it. You stop identifying as someone who's waiting for this to happen, and you instead become the person who knows that it's already done. And that is when you become magnetic, because you're no longer chasing your desires, you're anchoring them into your subconscious, therefore into your reality. So think about it like this. If you were to wake up as your desired self tomorrow, how would you act? What would they do? What kind of energy would they carry into their day? Because the desired version of you wouldn't be constantly stressing about whether their manifestation is here or whether things are working out. They'd be calm. They'd be grounded. They'd trust that everything is unfolding because in their world, in their mind, it already is. Now that's embodiment. It's not faking. You're just being before that manifestation even shows up in the 3D. Now these things I like to call the 3 identity shifts, and I name them this because there are shifts that you can make in your inner world to make manifestation feel more easy, but that's because your energy is aligning more so with your desired self. Therefore, your manifestations will feel like they're coming to you a lot more easier than before. Number 1, shift your start point. Most people start with a manifestation from a sense of wanting. So you might hear yourself say, oh, I want this. I hope this happens. I hope this happens. I just repeat myself. Or I wish this were to happen to me. But your desires aren't outside of you. They exist in potential. And I have a whole video talking about the state of potential. I made it quite a while back, but I still feel like it's a really useful video to watch, so I'll leave it in the description. So instead of reaching for that version of you, I want you to start as them. Start from them. So in the morning when you wake up, I want you to ask yourself this question. If I were to already have this manifestation, insert manifestation here, what energy would I wake up in today? And then when you do that, your actions throughout your day will naturally align with that version of you. It's not about forcing these new habits, it's just remembering who this version of you is. Remembering who you are. Number 2, shift your proof. This one is about what you choose to notice. When you're stuck in lack, that's when you start to notice absence. You'll start to notice what's not working, what hasn't shown up yet, and things like that. But when you're in the state of being, however, you'll notice alignment. So you'll notice little synchronicities, coincidences, and new feelings that reflect that new state of being, who you're embodying, okay? And those micro moments are proof that, reality is bending in your favor. I like to call this bridges of incident, as well as a lot of other people do too. But, little bits of proof in your 3D that show you that, reality is bending in your favor, things are lining up in the way you want them to. So when I started to embody a more confident, successful version of myself, I started to notice the way people would compliment me on my energy. I noticed how ideas started to flow a lot more naturally. I started to procrastinate less. I trusted myself more with the ideas that I had to put out there. And there were just little signs that, were just showing up in my life that showed me, okay, yes, I'm on the right path. And that wasn't luck. All that is just reflection, law of assumption. Whatever you assume to be true is true. The universe mirrors your state of being. It doesn't reflect your effort. So celebrate those little moments because they're a proof that you're in alignment with your manifestations. Number 3, shift your language. Sentences are literal frequency. The thoughts and the sentences that you say to yourself, that you say out loud, and that you choose to focus on and pour your energy into, they either align you with your desire or they distance you from it. So start paying attention to how you talk. If you say, I want, it keeps your manifestation in the future. If you say, I am, it brings your manifestation into your present waking life. Even it's coming creates distance because that therefore confirms that it's still not here yet. It's coming, but it's not here. We want it to be here. So instead, speak from the end. I have this now. I already have this. I'm living with it now. I'm living with this thing in my possession. Everything is aligning for me. That's what I want you to say to yourself. Everything is aligning for me and I already have everything it is that I want. And Neville Goddard says it best. I know, Neville Goddard jump scare. My apologies. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And that is literally embodiment in one sentence. So let me know in the comments, which one of these shifts do you need to work on most? Is it where you start at, the proof, or the language? For me, I tend to focus more on the language, because some of the things that you say or some of the things that you think repeatedly, you don't realize how much they can affect, what's going on in your 3D world. And I always catch myself flipping what I'm saying all the time. Okay, quick story time for you guys, because this is literally embodiment in action, and it actually happened quite recently. So a few weeks ago, I applied to be a partner with Umberto Giannini through Shopify Collabs, but when I put my social links onto Shopify Collabs, it said that I didn't meet the requirements, whether it be for the amount of followers that I have or engagement or whatever it was. So I just thought, okay, maybe next time, and I completely forgot about it. But I'd already had a brand deal with another hair company, Wow, and I was already filming content for them. I'd posted stuff for them, so I was seeing people engaging with my content. I was replying to comments and all of that stuff. So in a way, I was already showing up as the version of me who always gets brand deals and is constantly working for brands and filming content for them and posting it and whatever. And then literally the day before my birthday, I received an email through Shopify Collabs from Umberto Giannini saying that they approved my request and they're excited to work with me. Literally out of nowhere, like I said, I completely forgot that I sent the application through. And then after the initial shock of being like, oh my god, what the heck? That's when I realised that this is literally embodiment in action. Because I wasn't chasing this manifestation. I wasn't constantly refreshing my emails. I'd already become that version of me thanks to stuff that was currently happening in my 3D world. And the Umberto Giannini opportunity matched that energy. So that's why I got it. So it wasn't about the effort, it was all about alignment. So to wrap everything up in a cutesy little bow, trying separates you from your manifestation. Being is what brings your desire into now, into the present day. So when you start from your desired reality, from the moment you open your eyes, when you notice proof of that said alignment, and when you change your language to match the end state, you become magnetic to the version of yourself that already has whatever it is that you want. You're not waiting for it, you're literally living it. Because you're not waiting for this shift in your reality, you are the shift. Here's the wild truth, you're manifesting right now. You're not manifesting later, you're not going to manifest when you do a method, you're not going to manifest when you finally believe enough. The law of assumption doesn't just switch on and off, it's always working, even while you doubt it. But if manifestation is always working, then why does it sometimes feel like it's not? Why do some people seem to manifest so easily, but others try everything, yet see nothing? This is what we're diving into today. How the law of assumption actually works, what actually creates your reality, and why your intrusive thoughts aren't secretly manifesting chaos behind your back. So, the law of assumption. What actually is it? Basically, it means that whatever you assume to be true creates your reality. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you believe yourself to be. Neville Goddard says it best. I know there's another Neville jump scare, my bad. Assumption hardens into fact. And what that basically means is that your life will mold itself around your inner identity. So, let's say that if you believe that you're loved, you'll constantly see love showing up in your reality because reality agrees with you all the time. So, if you say and believe that you're unlucky, the same thing happens. Reality will just agree with you and reflect that back. But then that brings up the big question, if everything in my reality is just a reflection of what I assume, does that mean that every thought I have will end up being reflected into my 3D? And that's where people freak out and where we need to clear some things up. This part is especially important, especially if you deal with things like intrusive thoughts, anxiety, OCD, rumination. You are not manifesting every single random, scary or weird thought that just pops into your mind. Manifestation doesn't just respond to random thoughts. It responds to dominant focus and emotional energy. So in other words, only the thoughts that you feed, that you dwell on and that you identify yourself with, those are the thoughts that will manifest. Think about it like this. Have you ever had a dark or scary thought that ended up not actually happening? That's exactly the point. That's because your passing thoughts are like clouds. They'll just drift away without you realizing unless you just stare at them. Like, obviously they're not going to look like they're drifting away if you're looking at them. So if you have intrusive thoughts, honestly, don't panic. The universe isn't out there waiting to punish you just for thinking something random. It only mirrors the energy that you give something. So not every random thought that just flickers in your mind. So you're probably thinking, well, what am I actually giving my energy to every day? because that is what determines what shows up next. Changing your reality does not start with just forcing new thoughts. It starts with choosing a new state, the version of you that already has everything that you want. So what if there's a version of you out there that already has everything that you want, and all you have to do to become that version of yourself is to just assume that identity? You shift by assuming the mindset and identifying with that version of yourself. And you stop trying to become them, and you instead start being them. You start speaking, reacting, and making choices as if whatever you want to manifest is already done. It's already happened. And this is a paradox that so many people don't understand until it happens to them. When they stop chasing results, that's when they'll start getting them. Do you know what I mean? Because chasing keeps your mindset in the lack. It tells your mind, I don't have this yet. But when you're in a state of being, already acting like you already have that manifestation, you're telling your mind, I already have this. It's done. And the universe or reality, the 3D, whatever you want to call it, that will always mirror back what's going on in here. So what happens when you start embodying that new state? Well, reality starts rearranging, and it starts rearranging fast. And that process doesn't always look pretty. So when your assumptions change, reality will start bending in your favor. And that can mean that you'll lose some people in your life. You'll lose some friendships that you thought were probably going to last forever. You'll lose some opportunities. Things will start to shift around you, but that isn't the universe saying no. It's literally just rearranging itself so that it can match the new story that you've got in here. So if it feels like your life is falling apart when in fact things are actually falling into place, what even is that? I like to call it bridges of incident. Some people call it bridges of events. This period is a messy kind of in-between state where your current reality is dissolving and melting to make way for the new version, the new story. And when you stay faithful to the assumptions that you've created, this bridge of incident, this bridge of events will lead you straight into the life that you want for yourself. Literally straight there. And most people give up at this point. But if you hold steady and keep assuming from your desired state, everything else has no choice but to fall into that alignment. Because the truth is, manifestation never stops. It is always working. Every second of your life it's working, even if you don't mean it to. The law of assumption isn't something that you practice. It's something that you just are. So instead of asking, how do I start manifesting? Ask yourself, what have I been unconsciously assuming all this time? Because when you notice your assumptions and you actually become aware, that's when you regain your power. Because now you can choose. You can redirect things. You can decide right here, right now, who you are and what life you're going to live. You don't have to fear your mind anymore. You just have to guide it.